Welcome back. You're about to meet a Canadian man who lives in an isolated farmhouse and uses chickens, dry pasta, old shoes, just about anything to make noises. And it's turned him into a Hollywood star, not in front of the camera, but in front of the microphone. Film critic Richard Crouse takes us inside the unusual world of what's called Foley sound effects.
This is about as far from the glitz of Hollywood as you can get. But this secluded spot, about an hour north of Toronto, is where movie magic is made. A place where sounds are everything.
Just about anything makes an interesting sound. This old honey separator here.
This old contraption could become the sound of, say, a futuristic flying machine. Because inside his Uxbridge, Ontario studios, Andy Malcolm has influenced how hundreds of films sound. Finding a Foley artist in their studio kitchen,
Well, I'm gonna rip this chicken apart and see what sounds we get.
doesn't necessarily bode well for your appetite. Because Foley is all about creating live sounds for movies. That's opposed to sound effects, which are taken from a digital library.
We can determine whether it's a lung being ripped out, somebody's throat being slit, that kind of horror sound effect. Pretty disgusting.
Andy and his team have worked on nearly 700 films, winning nearly 30 sound awards. So many that their award shelf now only displays one of each.
I do live sound effects for movies. I watch the film and I recreate the sounds. And I try and put it in the proper space. I try and make it fit into the scene.
And you use unusual ways of doing that. So if you think that a punch sound is just a punch sound, it's not. You would find a creative way to make that sound feel more realistic than it would if you just punch someone in the face.
Yeah, I would use a belt, and I would snap the belt to get the high end part of the slap, and then I might even do like one of these kind of things.
The man now best known for movie sounds, Jack Foley, started working on films when they were still silent. But in the 1929 film Tarzan the Tiger, he added drama with subtle sounds, like the sound of a big cat's footsteps. Especially effective at a time when audiences weren't used to hearing anything on screen. But they heard him all right. Jack Foley was the first Tarzan yell ever heard on the silver screen. Yeah! 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 Later that same year, Showboat solidified Jack's sound career, launching the industry term Foley effects for his movie magic, like these water sounds. That might not sound like much to us now, but just hearing the sound of someone rowing back then was revolutionary. Now when you arrive at a movie theater, you expect sound, and lots of it. Sound is a vital part of movie making. Even before seeing a single frame of this film, I bet you'll know which one it is. Yep, the classic 1975 film Jaws. When special effects weren't exactly cutting edge.
And cut.
It was sound that upped the drama. It was created by a film score composer. Engine sounds like this are crucial in films like the recent Ford versus Ferrari movie. It was created by a sound editor on a computer. Foley is an art form all on its own.
And how exactly are you doing that?
That's rigatoni. We've got the wet chamois, probably one of the most popular Foley props going.
Right.
Just put a few pieces of rigatoni in the chamois.
Even when you know what it is, it's still kind of grim. It's sort of gruesome to hear it like that. That's amazing. What goes on with the grapefruit?
More kind of gross sounds. If we're doing the sound of someone getting their throat slit. And this is the other, more dramatic.
I think I've heard that on like The Walking Dead a few hundred times.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How did you find your way to becoming a Foley artist?
I always wanted to be a picture editor. I ended up getting a job as an assistant sound editor with these two gentlemen who came over from Britain to kickstart the feature film sound in Canada. They would take me into the Foley studio and I would do their cue sheets for them to keep track of where everything is. They didn't like doing it, they weren't very good at it, and I was kind of a kid, and I just kind of said, well, I'll try that.
That led to quite a career. In 1979, Andy co-produced a film called Track Stars. It used split screens to showcase live Foley being created. And it got pretty crazy. That's Andy on the right, breaking out some heavy-duty Foley moves in his heyday.
I've seen footage of you doing Foley, and it looked like I was watching a dancer or an athlete.
Yeah, it's very physical. It's very creative. That's the best part about it.
Cut! We're out of sync.
Watching Andy is like watching a magician.
Canadian director and Oscar winner Sarah Polley flew in to meet me for a chat on one of her favorite film topics.
I feel like more and more as filmmakers we're getting divorced from that process, that the Foley is just folded in the schedule and delivered to you and nobody even lets you know when it's happening. And I'm like, oh my God, that's my favorite part.
Sarah, hello, welcome.
Starting as a child star in Road to Avonlea,
Because they're starting to call me the story girl.
and essentially growing up on camera,
I just don't want to make her feel part of that conversation.
it's her directing career that has underlined the significance of Foley.
It's one of those invisible arts like dialogue editing. When you hear bad Foley or bad dialogue editing, it's obvious, and it takes you away from the thrust of the film, which is the story.
We have been preyed upon like animals.
Her latest film, Women Talking, used Foley to help create the feeling of being on a farm.
It's how we want to teach our daughters to defend themselves. By fleeing?
Not fleeing, but leaving. I was just talking about
I would rather
leaving.
stand my ground and shoot each man in the heart and bury him in a pit than flee.
Her set was made to look like a hayloft, but instead of wide shots showing that, the open burn feel is expressed through the echoey sounds of the actors' footsteps.
Keep nonsense like that to yourself, please.
It's really wide and long.
Movie sounds have fascinated her for years.
Famously, Skywalker Ranch, which George Lucas built, I remember visiting there and hearing this story that when he first showed the studio Star Wars and sound wasn't done, he was just laughed at. It was just the stupidest, most absurd movie in the entire world with the voices the way they were and the like bad sounds of prop laser beams. Like it was just like terrible. And that then with the sound, it became this incredible movie that was obviously one of the most successful movies of all time. And so he kind of built this monument to sound because he knew how important that was for his career and for Star Wars and for every film.
It's spiritual, I think, and to bring us to a place that's hard to access just through your brain or your eyes. And sound does that.
Hello?
The 1987 film, I've Heard the Mermaids Singing, was Canadian Patricia Rozema's directorial debut.
And I think it's that.
For every production, sound is top of mind for her.
Sound somehow is more emotional, and that's such a huge part of what you're trying to do when you make a movie, is create this immersive experience that takes you out of your daily reality.
Andy worked on her latest film, Into the Forest, where Foley was used in some parts because of crew concerns.
There's certain safety things. You can't just have principal actors working with chainsaws. So a lot of the chainsaw sound is recreated.
Patricia walked us through the Foley on her film.
That's called an insert,
That's
which
an
is
insert.
just like a shot
Yeah.
that he's not operating it, just in case the chain flies off and kills, somebody. Dad! And that tick, 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 there's something disturbing about repetitive sounds and it's brought really far forward. So here, you have them running along. If you were there on set, you'd see a Steadicam running backwards and focus puller and a sound person running together. So you have like sound of herd of elephants, basically. So you can't actually use that sound, but you need their footsteps and you need their breathing, you need their panic. So that all has to be recreated.
Right.
Andy was such a genius. Good cinema you believe, bad cinema you don't believe. Even if it's aliens and whatever, it's still, there's a belief level that you can't get to when those little things like the footsteps, it just sounds like they come from a different shoe.
Picture your mind.
Cabinet of Curiosities, created by multiple Oscar winner Guillermo del Toro, required a special touch by Andy.
There is very high-class glassware. And so I had to go to Ashley's to find the finest china. So it just had the right ring and the right resonance. And I have to say, though, after collecting props for so many years, we've got pretty much about 98% of everything we need here.
It's a storage space only a Foley artist and his assistant Sandra could love.
I have all the props all up and down here.
Shelves and stacks and drawers, oh my! But it's organized chaos, with similar pieces together because every different one
European, no, wrong dialed.
Can make a different sound.
Like the really old phones.
Ooh, there you go.
That's the one right there.
What is bad Foley?
Bad Foley is when you can hear it. A really obvious example would be a bad kung fu movie. They're using the same sticks for every kind of punch. If you can hear it and it doesn't fit, that's bad Foley. I kind of equate it to a drummer. If he hits a bad note, you're going to hear it right away.
Coming up,
you want the sound to be real.
The limitless creativity of the audio artist.
That's the name of the game, coming up with new ideas.
These are the tools of the trade for a Foley artist. A weird, dusty collection of everyday things that could find their voice in a Hollywood blockbuster.
Every room in this Foley studio is packed to the ceiling with these kind of props. And these are the props that Foley artists use to make the sounds that we hear in the films.
That's unlike sound editors who use computer files. In this Foley studio north of Toronto, each recording room is surrounded by an air gap, floor, ceiling, and walls to ensure zero vibration or sounds can enter. And even everyday rooms could become a recording studio. Andy Malcolm's studio is called Footsteps because the sound of footsteps is one of the most difficult Foley sounds to recreate seamlessly.
They seem like the most rudimentary part of all of this, considering some of the sound that you actually create.
Footsteps are the hardest thing because you have to essentially walk in place, like you're not moving around like a person would be through a building.
Andy's been in the business for more than 40 years now. That's probably more than 5,000 footsteps.
And the great thing about Foley is you're on your feet all day and you're throwing car doors around and you have to be in some kind of shape.
So Andy's slowing down and found someone else to fill his many, many shoes. Goro Koyama is Andy's protege. He's learned from the best how to use sound to underline a film's character.
My job has a lot to do with understanding body movements and how to express emotions with movements, sound.
We thought the best way to show how he creates Foley is by having him add to a little scene we created.
Okay, go ahead.
It won't exactly be vying for an Academy Award, but before Goro works his magic, this is what it sounded like.
And action. Yeah, good. Perfect.
How are we going to put Foley to this?
Let's start with footsteps.
All right.
Footsteps is a series of sound effects, so we have to make sure that everyone is nice.
And perfectly in sync with the picture.
That's right.
At the back of the studio, sound editor Chelsea Bodie is recording Goro's performance.
So Kevin and I back here, we're manning the desks. Kevin's got control of the 2 microphones that we use to record. We're recording into Pro Tools, and once it's recorded, then I take all of our tracks and edit them to sync to fit the picture.
And as I've looked around here, there are shoes everywhere. So you have to be, I guess, very careful about what shoes you wear, because every shoe sounds a little different.
Exactly. That's the fun part of my job.
And the surface makes a big difference as well. So as you look in this room alone, I see there's a wooden surface, there's what looks like concrete, there's Formica here. You can make almost any sound.
We can never have enough props or surfaces, doors, windows. So that's it for him though, right? Did we get to the end of his walk?
Not quite.
Not quite. He has a turn.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got my footsteps there. What happens now?
So let's try the other guy.
Okay. And you're probably gonna have to change your shoes for
Yes, yes. Let's see if I'm gonna try on these boots.
Okay.
Suddenly appears into that shot,
Yeah.
but we can make him sound like he runs up.
Oh, that's a good idea. So we don't see the run, but we want to know that it's there.
We can make it sound like he runs up, yes. Can I see it once? Yeah. So I will start running over this shot.
Okay. So when he comes in, he's angry.
Yes.
Because I've just stolen his car. So you're stomping a little harder than you were when I was running. So that's part of the acting part of it.
There's a lot of acting element to my performance. So this is Richard climbing out of the car. We can add a lot of emotions to actors' performance with sound effects.
All right, so to do the punch, you found what is this a roll of?
This is a rolled up phone book. Do we want a few different versions of that?
Yeah, that'd
Okay.
be nice.
Cut.
I think that like the third one sounded like my face being punched.
Another thing I'd like to add for that,
Okay.
because the punch is in slow-mo.
Yeah.
We got this old fishing rod.
Right.
Well, now we can make you fall.
Yeah.
Suitcase packed with bed sheets and whatnot.
Cut.
Would you like to try the glasses?
Glasses hitting the ground. Stepping on the glasses. We will do the big stomp here, and we'll add the broken glasses afterwards on another track.
The end result?
Hey, dude. You stole my car.
Wow.
You've just added a whole new dimension by having him run into the frame and then walk away like that.
Right.
And it really sort of brings the story more to life.
Goro already has more than 300 real films to his credit, including blockbusters June.
The test is simple. Remove your hand from the box, and you die.
Cloverfield, and producer Ridley Scott's Blade Runner 2049.
Is it fair to call it the invisible art?
Yes. When you're doing a dramatic film, you want the sound to be real, and you want it to fit into the picture. When you're doing animation, you get to kind of go off the deep end.
Can I have my hat, please?
And then comedy falls somewhere in the middle. You want it to sound real, but at the same time, you get to exaggerate. So if you're doing dodgeball and Rip Torn's throwing wrenches at your head.
If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
You're gonna do some fun and funny things.
He's a master, and everybody knows that, and everybody within the industry kind of worships him.
We like to get a little spritz here.
I love that the tires squealing in Ford versus Ferrari, this race car movie, is him with a hot water bottle on the floor making
Is
that.
it really?
Yeah, yeah.
But like, just imagine that brain that comes up with that. It's just amazing. It's like the energy of a 4-year-old imagination turbo with adult genius.
Yeah.
It's so amazing.
That's the name of the game, coming up with new ideas. And that's the fun part. When you come up with the perfect sound, it's magical. Don't make it look too easy, please.
Yeah, I know. That was the one right there.
That was the one.
I start work tomorrow.
The accolades keep coming for Andy and his team. They have been nominated in 3 sound categories for the 2023 Canadian Screen Awards.